Okay, are we ready? All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order today for Monday, May 12th, 2025 for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. First, we'll start with roll call. Carrie Stuckey, that's me, I'm here. Shane Carden will be absent today. Position 3 is vacant currently. Position 4, Eric Dibzinski.
Here.
Position 5, Tom Jones.
Here.
Position 6, Stephanie Huerta.
Here.
Position 7, Vicky Biggs. Here. Our student representative, Callie Boyer. Here. And council member Eric Marshall is absent today. Okay. Then we will move on to item 2, approval of the agenda. Were there any questions or changes to be made to the agenda? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Next, we will move on to the approval of the minutes for our regular meeting of April 14th, 2025. Were there any questions or changes to be made to the minutes that anyone had?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is approved unanimously. All right, item 4 is public comments. Did we receive any public comments online? No? Okay. Did we have anyone present that wanted to make a public comment? No? Okay. All right, seeing none, we will move on to our discussion items. Item A, pickleball funding plan discussion.
Okay, so we have our consultants here from RWD. If you want to turn on your mic, I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, and you can walk us through the plan update, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about where we're at and next steps.
Sounds great, thank you. I'm Phil Vandevander. I'm with RWD Landscape Architects, and I'm one of the project managers for our side.
Good morning. I'm Don Campbell. I'm the project manager for RWD Landscape Architects.
And I'll throw the plan up here so Stefania can take a look at it.
Brian's going to show us that what you're going to see is that we've been through a lot of iterations on the plans, and what you're going to see right now is the plan we're moving forward with, that we're going to go to permit and we're going to construct once we get the money raised. And so it's not much different than what you've seen. However, we still have 8 courts, not 4. It's still 8. 2 of the courts are termed handicap accessible, and we have the handicap parking. So we're available for questions if we're going to go through the plans, talk about when we're going to permitting, and then you should have in your packet, you should have a budget estimate, and that budget estimate that you see is for where we are right now, and it's we believe it's a reasonable budget to anticipate. It has been escalated to construction costs next year, anticipating next year, and it also has been escalated to what we call on-island pricing, because it's a construction project on island, and sometimes that can have its own issues that cause it to be a little bit more than you would off island. And then Philip is going to talk about where we are in the process for permitting, give you an update, and then we'd be available for questions.
That's great. So we are currently sitting at submitting for city permits in mid-June. And what we're doing over the next month is we're finalizing our stormwater design. So we're figuring out how, when rainwater falls, how it's going to be collected, how it's going to be managed on the site. And once we have all those reports, we'll go in for our city permits, so that's grading, site development, and building permits for the fences. And once we have all of those, we anticipate that process will take typically between 3 and 4 months to get all those permits. So we're looking at maybe, if we're lucky, as soon as July, but somewhere between July and early October that we'd have those permits in hand, and that's really the last step before we start moving towards bid and construction, and once the financing's in place.
You want to talk through some of the changes with the ADA access and what are you talking about with water retention and the berms and vegetation line, all that?
So I'm going to stand up and speak out loud and look at the plan. And you have a copy of the plan in your hand. The existing entrance to the football field and to the pickleball site, we're going to renovate that entrance area and create a couple of handicap accessible parking spots there. So without having to build anything new, we can literally use, use what's there with a little bit of alteration and take care of the need for accessible parking. Our entranceway, the old plans, we had an entranceway right here coming down and straight onto the sidewalk. Now we were able to adjust the grade so that it's an accessible walkway from the parking up into the courts. No handrails, it's just a decent ramp, and it is less than 5%. So anyone who's ever pushed a wheelchair up a 5% ramp, you know how hard that is. So we made it as easy as we could. So we're again, there's as far as the stormwater management, because this is paving on grass, it has to be treated. The water has to be. We can't just run the water off into the pond. Over here into the existing pond, we have to actually collect the water and hold it somewhere for detention. So what we're going to do is, we've got some soil issues out there. We have to over excavate, dig up more soil to get the good soil underneath the courts. So we're going to take advantage of that, and we're going to, the gravel that we use in here to get rid of the poor soils, we will use to store the water underneath the courts. So we don't have to put in a bunch of piping. We can just take it from underneath the court over to the pond that's right here. So because we've got the bad soil, some bad soils, because that's all fill that was put up there when they constructed the ball fields. So we're going to kind of make a good thing out of a bad, is that we'll have to excavate that material. We'll have to excavate a little bit more, another foot and a half, and then use that for our stormwater. Now when we excavate that material, we're investigating and looking to make sure if we can use that material on site, waste it on site. We're not going to be able to do all of it, but we want to waste as much as we can on site so we don't have to pay to haul it off. That also helps us build the berm. There's already a berm up here between the residents, and now we'll be able to take that berm, make it a little bit taller, and try to do as much as we can to mitigate noise by using a landform. So hope that gives you an update of where we are. We're a lot further along than where we were. We're ready to get permits, and then the only thing that Philip said stands in our way is making sure we have the money to move ahead.
Thank you. Did we have any questions for John? Stefania, did you have any questions?
Could you remind me where this location is, where it will be?
Yeah, this will be in the northeast corner of Fort Nugent Park.
So behind the football field or over where the basketball courts are?
No, the other side, behind the football field. Yeah, right up
Behind the
against
football.
the parking lot in that corner where we currently have the starting tee for the disc golf course.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
I would add one more thing, the way, because there's another entrance that's not used, it's a service entrance that's used. Is it Woodbridge? What's the street?
Ridgeway Drive.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, that's it. Because we're planning on using that for the construction entrance, construction will take place without impacting any other events or anything in the park. We can do everything off the side, from off the parking lot.
Don, can you quickly go over the additive bid alternates at the bottom of the pricing, just so we get some clarity on that, and we can hear it verbally, since not everybody who might be watching has this packet in front of them?
So we've identified 3 bid alternates where if the bids come in good and come in where we want them, we'd like to take all 3 of them, or we could take whichever ones, we set up the bid to where we can take whichever one is in the best interest of the city. So even though it's listed 1, 2, and 3, that may not be how we take them. Again, we set it up so it's in the best interest of the project and the city, which one we would take. We'd like to take all 3. One is called the sport court surfacing. So the courts are being constructed just like a tennis court, pickleball courts constructed out of asphalt. And in a lot of times you have courts that are just striped. You have the lines, the black court, white lines. Ideally, we want to do what's called a sport court surface. And that's basically you're painting it in colors, and it can be it gives it a little smoother surface to play on. So, but you don't have to do that. We have clients that decline to do that because of the budget concerns, and they may do it later on. So what, in this case, we would add that as an alternate if the bids come in good. The main thing we want to do is we want to construct courts. Whether they're painted or not, we can still play on them, and they're still going to be striped. So that's why the sport court surfacing is on there. It's an acrylic paint. The pickleball court concrete curb, there's fencing around the courts. And typically, around the courts, that fencing is installed in a curb. And that helps over time. If you get a lot of traffic or a lot of wear or around the edges of the courts, the asphalt doesn't have an edge. The asphalt ends at the grass. So we put a curb, concrete curb, around it so that it protects the courts, protects the edge of the asphalt. You may get a little more long-term life out of it, but that comes at a cost. It's something we'd like to do, and it's something we can do, but again, it doesn't impact play. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build courts and build courts that we can use. And in some cases, clients have taken this alternate when the money's good, and some cases they haven't. Number 3 is the fence-mounted windscreen. Knowing where we are and how the wind blows all the time, particularly at Fort Nugent, we typically put wind screens on the fencing to mitigate the wind, and that wind does have an impact on pickleball. It's not a must-have; it's we want to have. So the idea was we took these 3 items, made them alternate bid items, because the number one thing we want to do is we want to have a bid that we can award and courts that we can construct. These other things we deal with if the money comes in. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. I think that helps spell out exactly what those are, especially for those who aren't here to see it. So thank you.
Hey, Don. The windscreens, I noticed, and I think I'd mentioned to you a long time ago, at the swim courts, they couldn't put windscreens up because the structure of the fence wasn't strong enough. I just want to make sure that's covered.
We have structural engineers evaluated our fencing, and the fencing will be, you'll be able to put the screening on now, or you can put the screening on at a later date. We've had them structural engineers evaluate our design.
Okay. One other question for funding. When we go out for funding for these courts, what number are we going to be using? It looks like the bottom line with alternates is $1,038,000. Is that correct?
That's
that-
correct. That's with all the alternates. We have a 15% contingency right now, which, as we get closer to design and closer to bid and finishing it up, we would like to reduce that down to 10%. It also has an escalator for next year, and I think it's either 3 or 5%. So what we want to do is we want to come in, RWD, we want to come in right in the middle of the bids. We don't want to be the low bidder for sure. We don't want to be the high bidder. We want to come in right around the middle. So I think that the number that you're going to be, these are hard costs. They don't include any of the soft costs, fees, testing, things like that. So I would say the number that you'll be looking for is probably within 15% of that $1,038,000.
So purposes of seeking funding, we would use that $1,038,000 plus, what you're saying.
I would go for the $1,038,000 because I think what we'll find is the bids will probably come in at or below. You're going to get some bids that are going to be a lot higher, going to scare us all. I would say I would look at that at $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, did we have any further questions or discussion on that item?
I will also add that we did get notice that the YAF, the Youth Athletic Facilities Grant, and the Community Outdoor Athletic Facilities Grant were both combined into a single list in the House and Senate budget proposals. So that latest proposal, by combining those, that kicks us down the list a little bit. So the latest proposal shows Oak Harbor pickleball courts listed as a second alternate for the North Sound region. The budgets are not yet finalized and won't be until the governor signs them. But just to be aware of that, we're not very hopeful that that's going to end up being at least passed on a first round of projects. So.
Okay, let me just make sure I got this. So on their list, they combined the two grant requests.
Mm-hmm.
So that substantially higher that way then.
Yeah, so 2 grant programs. We had applications in for both of them, but for different projects. And they've combined those all as part of the state budget and cost reductions.
Too late to deconflict that, I guess. It's a huge list. I happened to find it online. So.
Yeah, I feel like every time we put in an application, they respond with, we've had an overwhelming amount of applicants, more than we've ever had. So yeah, more and more you see that the needs just continue to grow and we're not quite able to match the funding to the needs. So we'll need to have discussions for next steps with implementation. Having the construction documents together, having the permitting ready to go makes us very attractive for grant proposals and that we're shovel ready. That will definitely be an advantage for us, and we'll continue to work with Windy Horn on submitting applications for grants, but we definitely need to look at other alternative revenue sources for this, including community donations. We talked a little bit about in our athletic facilities subcommittee about a North Whidbey Pickleball Association. There really isn't a organized pickleball association as one exists in South Whidbey. So maybe we can do some work in helping to facilitate a little more organized group that can help with getting the word out and awareness of the project and helping us with some fundraising, campaigning around the construction of the courts. I know that the U.S. Pickleball Association is very active in helping trying to find funding for facilities to encourage playing communities, especially ones that don't really have facilities yet. So we will explore all those and work with our subcommittee on taking steps that way. And then we'll also want to look at what discretionary funding, either through park impact fees or REAP funding, or maybe ability to redirect some capital project funding might look like as well. And we'll bring some of those recommendations back at a future commission meeting.
Just for your information, Brian, I did talk to the North Whidbey Picklers Association. It's a very small group, like 30 people. And they're very happy being small and going and playing at the Oak Harbor Christian School, and don't really have a desire for their group to expand into a larger representation. But I did think about it more, how we could go about that, looked at a couple of websites. But I would like to discuss that with you you had mentioned subcommittee meeting might be a good idea to draw some people in for discussion purposes. Because getting somebody to step forward, it'd be a pretty large project to put together an association representative of all of North Whidbey. Thanks.
Okay. Brian, do you need any kind of motion from us at this point?
No, I don't believe so at this point. Mostly this is just an update. The commission had wanted to hear where we're at with the planning as we get to 100% completion, and how the permitting is going, and kind of where we're at with funding and how it's looking for actual implementation. So like Donna Phillips said, they're finishing up work around the permitting and the stormwater, and we'll just keep working on funding. We'll have another round of applications next year. We'll definitely want to look at how long the permits will be good for. Should be fairly easy to renew those if we need to, but it'd be great if we could do it within that permit window. So more discussion. We'll do some work. We'll continue to work on it and then bring it back.
Okay, thank you. Eric, did you have any more comments? No? Okay, all right. With that, we will go ahead and move on to item B, RFP for the Inclusive Playground update. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, thank you. So Brian emailed out a draft for the RFP, and it is also in the packet here. I don't know if everybody got a chance to look it over yet.
Yeah, let me pull this up. And it's all right if you haven't yet. You'll have a few weeks with this to look at it and give me your comments. We'll just walk through it together. So our subcommittee has been working on a scope for the inclusive playground. We have already brought this to council previously, but we'll want to bring it back to council one more time with the proposed RFP, let them get a look at it and have some discussions on how we want to move forward and if the timing is right for that or not. We did submit a Land Water Conservation Fund grant with a match from the Windjammer Improvement Funds for design, permitting, and construction of the playground. Like I said, a lot of those grants we have had difficulty getting approved for, and the state is making modifications to a lot of their grant programs. So again, this is another one that we are put on an alternate project list. We scored very high, but the comments that we got were that they would like to see a little more of a shovel-ready project with permits and design and everything in hand. This is a little bit different than how I would normally go about a playground design. Usually it's a design build. We pay someone, we talk with them about the type of equipment we want, the layout and footprint, and any furniture, fixtures, different amenities, and they'll put in the design and construct and implement. We usually don't separate out the design and construction implementation portions. So we're approaching this a little bit differently, but we are building into it a continuation, ability to continue on or modify the contract into bidding and construction phase services. So in the RFP, we get a little bit of background on the project. We're looking for professional services for the design, permitting, construction documents for the implementation of approximately a 15,000 square foot inclusive play environment. We give a little bit of background about the demographics and makeup of Oak Harbor, and then about the project itself, that we're looking for inclusive play environment, which does not currently exist here in Oak Harbor, nor on Whidbey Island. We have a few playgrounds that have adaptive elements in our region, but until I think it was Mount Vernon that announced they were building an inclusive playground, the nearest one to us was about 81 miles away. The park that we're proposing for this to be built in is Windjammer Park on the west side of the park. Here in this location, adjacent to or connecting to the pathway that comes down from the basketball courts and comes over from the shoreline parking. We had originally talked about doing a shift in that parking, that lower parking, to add more handicap stalls. However, I think with the discussion around Flintstone Park and shoreline parking and the desirability of that parking for the public, we didn't want to take up too many of those with stalls that would be servicing the playground, and allow that to stay open for people that just want to come and view the harbor. So instead, we're looking at adding handicap stalls along the parking lot here, close to the pathway, where it'll be easy to come down and access that. We'd like the playground to have some imaginative features, some theming to it as well, that aligns well with the park and maybe the adjacent splash park on the other side of the park there. And then it'll have safety surfacing and fenced around lighting, different things like that. So the proposal requirements will have a letter of interest. We're asking for a relevant experience, resumes of proposed staff, their project approach, and a cost proposal as well. Right now we have the criteria set at evenly dispersed between the firm's understanding of the general approach, their completeness of the work included in the proposal, their experience, the staff qualifications, and then their demonstrated ability to perform the work. We could play around with the weighted grading of this with the subcommittee that would review the proposals. And then we have a copy of the professional services agreement. So the scope of services that we're looking at is for them to provide a project overview. They'll look at the site, look at permit requirements, identify the mission and goals that we want for the play structure, and then meetings with the project team and any project partners. We'd also like for them to help us with a citizen participation plan, review our existing research on it, maybe do some light surveying of potential users and stakeholders, especially groups that work with children with special needs, conduct a couple of community meetings to get input, and then bring us back the information that they receive from that. We want to do a good needs analysis on what our demographics are, our community profile, our existing facilities, scale the project to potential participation levels. We had estimated about 15,000 square feet. We want to make sure that that's an appropriate footprint. If that could be brought down or if it needs to be expanded, just make sure that that's the size that we need for what we're looking for with a regional inclusive playground design. Make sure that the project meets best standards of practice, and we look at a comparison that for national and local levels. We'll also have them as part of the site analysis, look at development requirements, constructability, site prep that might be needed. They'll put together a site plan for us for the permitting, recommendation of safety surfacing materials, and the support sublayer, how we want to build that out, along with drainage, everything required with that. We'll compile a list of equipment and fixtures. We had put together a draft list of that with our subcommittee and decided to not include that list. I would like to see what they propose, and we can work. We have kind of an idea of the type of things we'd like to see in there, but I don't want to fence them in with what we're thinking. If there's some creative solutions out there, equipment or features that we haven't seen before, we really want this to be unique and attractive and be a major draw for the community as a whole. I know playgrounds like this, people will drive an hour and a half to come to a good inclusive playground. Our family did in Colorado. We literally drove an hour and a half out to Grand Junction because of the playground. We'll determine fencing needs, lighting needs as well, and then spatial relationship to other components within the park, the lagoon, the kitchens and pavilions, the basketball courts, and make sure that we consider special events that we do in the park as well, and where those are usually set up for. And then we'll have conceptual plans and renderings. They'll give us construction cost estimates, so we'll make sure we get that dialed in a little more. So when we're going after funding asks and grants, we have a better cost estimate in hand. And then roll finally into construction documents for doing bidding. They'll have all site prep, stormwater, electric hookups, subsurfacing, safety surfacing, equipment installation, lighting, furniture fixtures, all that, in connection with the pathways. And also, like I said, that rollover to extend this from a planning professional services agreement into a project and construction management agreement as well. And then any other planning considerations or contingencies, I just kind of have that in for anything that we might not have considered yet, and we'll probably replace that with anything that we might have missed. So that's just a brief overview of the RFP and what we're looking at for scope. So I'll give you about 2 weeks. You each have a copy of it, and we'll continue to talk about it in our subcommittee, but give me your thoughts and questions. We'll bring this to council in a workshop. In the future, we had set one up and it ended up getting pushed back. I need to work with the administration on an appropriate date to do that, especially with the summer months where we have a little fewer meetings. But yeah, we'll want any feedback or comments you have. We'll make some tweaks, and I'll put together a PowerPoint presentation and share that with the commission. And then we'll bring that to a workshop with council for their thoughts, any comments, and we'll bring it back to you one more time to get your vote of approval on the RFP before we post it. So that's kind of what we're thinking for timeline. Yes.
I have a couple of questions
Yeah.
just based on this. I read this earlier and then coming back to it now. Looking at the site map, it looks like what we've highlighted and from what your discussion was this area near the kitchen and the basketball courts. In the RFP, are we allowing for a wider purview of location in the park. In the past, we have talked about other locations and especially tying into that lower parking lot to have more flexibility to add in those handicaps, accessible spaces and all that stuff. Did that change? Or are we just thinking it's here? I guess one of the concerns I have, and we had talked about this before when this idea was initially here, was sort of putting all of our stuff in one pile in this area of the park and then not doing anything. And we had talked about, I just want to get clarity on kind of where we're going there.
Sure.
And where
Yeah.
our imagination landed us.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked at a couple different sites. Site evaluation is part of the RFP. We are recommending this site, but I would like the consultants to look at the other sites that we were considering, which are Neal Park and Fort Nugent. We would replace the existing playground at Fort Nugent with this inclusive playground, or Neal Park, which is pretty much a blank slate right now. But it's a little more in a neighborhood that's kind of hidden away. It's a little harder to find. And inclusive playground like this requires quite a bit of parking.
Yeah.
And so this was I guess the lowest hanging fruit and the most likely location.
I mean, make no mistake, I like Windjammer Park. I'm not saying locate it to another place. I'm saying a different location than what's zoomed in on this picture that you provided. Or just, are we considering that? Because we definitely have more space in the park. I'm just asking, like, because it would sit right in front of the amphitheater, that thing. It'd be right next to the basketball courts. You know, we'd be putting all of our activities actually in one little triangle of trail inside the park at this point. I only ask that to say, do we have a current Windjammer plan for how amenities and attractions that we want to add? I think this is a great one, and this is like a hallmark attraction. So building around it, actually making sure it has its own space, I think, and it feels like its own space is important to me.
Yeah, and this location was selected in that Windjammer plan for the playground.
Right.
I'll pull that up and show you it. That was done back in, I think it was 2016. This was the site that was selected for it in that layout of where things were going to go.
I just want to make sure that we have space to either grow our existing things that are there and also make sure that this gets highlighted as something that is incredibly valuable. It's not just another playground like we have all over town where we just have slap, playground equipment in there. This is actually something special, and making sure that our location within that park, we already picked a very special park. Now let's pick the location in the park that makes the most sense to highlight, I think, the attraction that it is. Second question I have here is, we've had lots of conversation in the past about what we can and can't do on the surface here with vehicles and everything else because of some other deficiencies in infrastructure that are in the park. How are we approaching and handling that to avoid sort of project inflation, knowing that there's sprinkler issues and other things that, vehicles going on into, was why we couldn't do 4th of July down here. Are we planning to do something about that so when we do something like this, we can do them separately without having to worry about project inflation of having to do all of that stuff with the sprinklers and any low voltage and all that stuff that's in the ground?
Yeah. The sprinklers and topsoil, that's kind of a separate project. We already have that funded within the Windjammer funds.
Okay.
I don't know that we would do the same time as this project. One doesn't necessarily necessitate the triggering of the other or impact the other than we would take a little chunk of that out, for the footprint of the playground. But
I guess I was just thinking about project staging, not necessarily that they go together, but which one do we want to do first? So when we do it all, it makes sense, rather than, I would say, the cobbled approach, the quilt work approach that we've done with some of these things in the past. We're obviously doing new things, and there's a new era with you here in directing and guiding, which is, I'm incredibly thankful for. But just not get in the same old habit of how Oak Harbor has done stuff with kind of patchwork, some of these fixes together, but rather think about it a little bit more systematically. So we do it right the first time and make it easier on the few staff that we have maintaining all this.
yeah, and it's a good thought. If we're going to disrupt use of the park, the fewer times we can do that, the better. And if we get a general contractor that can do several of these projects at one time, if the, you know, the cement and safety surfacing pour and playground installation are all things that are in their wheelhouse, then yeah, we certainly could do a larger construction bid project, include all those and kill several birds with one stone, for sure.
I think with the location and the just overall plan for Windjammer, that might be something we can touch on whenever we get our workshop scheduled with city council. That might be a good time to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And I think even in regards to our last conversation about pickleball, I mean, getting some direction as far as priority. So we have the enthusiasm of the city leadership in general behind these projects, and making sure that then the enthusiasm will then generate the energy, that hopefully generate the finances. And I think if we can get on that page as soon as possible, that would be great with all these RFPs and things in play.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay.
One other comment, sorry, I know it's me. We had talked in the past, and this was, you know, I guess in the previous administration, was looking at solving some of the parking issues. And this will put a greater parking burden, and rightfully so, and that's exciting. Have we had any more conversations about some of the other availabilities down there that we had had in the past about expanding for parking? Thinking particularly like the space behind Pioneer Automotive would have been suggested in the past, or do we have a plan in place to address that as we add, you know, some really great improvements and a really fantastic attraction to this park?
Yeah, Steve Schuler with Public Works has done a great job with some of the open houses for the waterfront district planning. We've had a couple of really great meetings here at City Hall and down at the Yacht Club. Parking was a big discussion point of that. And, you know, as we talked about public spaces, a lot of these designs have activity type spaces with plazas, and we'll have a lot more draw. They have multi-use housing areas, you know, with shops and then, you know, condos and things like that. And how we bring more people down to the waterfront and where are they going to park? What are the trends we're seeing? Yeah, those are all discussions that have been happening and things that we'll continue to consider and look at as we start implementing some of these development plans.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item C then, Parks and Recreation Master Plan discussion.
Okay. There we go. All right, so our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, often referred to as a PROS plan, which stands for Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, was last updated in 2019. This is before the Parks and Recreation Department was created, and this was handled by Development Services. They updated from the 2009 plan, the document structure, goals, policies, and projects, level of service, and then they had a 6-year implementation plan that was also updated. Park impact fees were not changed and haven't been changed for a very long time. Finance and our Deputy City Administrator, David Goldman, has been working on updating the impact fees, including park impact fees now. During that plan, they looked at level of service, spatially, looking at neighborhoods and community, looking at ratio of recreational facilities. They looked at the service map on where we had good inventory of access to parks and recreational opportunities, and where there were opportunities to expand that, and where there were needs within the community. There's another map kind of showing those levels of service. And then they had within the plan a lookout of what the current park and recreation amenity levels were right now to community needs, and then looking out to 2036 and what those what that increase of needs to meet that population growth would be. Something that's interesting to note that it is in 2019 when this was put together, the population was 22,700. They weren't expecting that population growth to hit 25,900 until 2036. Currently, we're at 24,622. Seems like the population trend is a little faster than what they were looking at even just 5 years ago. They did an inventory of the current levels of service with recreational facilities, basketball courts, tennis courts, softball fields, and little league fields, another baseball diamonds, soccer fields, football fields, volleyball courts. And not a whole lot ended up changing in those years since. They did have also some recommendations on where additional park space was needed in underserved areas of the community, and then also needs for open space. This is where the 7th Avenue Wetlands Trail Feasibility Study recommendation came from, as well as recommendations around the Centennial Grove and Fred Marsh. There's a list of trails, and then this was their trails opportunities map in providing more connectivity out to recreational areas like the Joseph Whitby State Park Beach and the downtown waterfront area, as well as the 7th Avenue Trail System. Now, the city currently has an active transportation plan that is implementing trail build out, and you see that with the renovation of Whitby Avenue and 7th Avenue, and we'll continue to see those put in bike paths and better commuter walking trails as well. So this was the 6-year plan from that 2019 plan. They held on that updates to the Windjammer Park playground equipment, Neal Tower renovation, replacement of playground equipment at some of our little neighborhood parks, the Harbor Heights land acquisition and improvements there for a regional sports park, playground equipment at some playgrounds like Coochie Park, which we were able to take care of those. Neal Park pickleball courts, which ended up getting moved to Rotary Park, ended up moved now to Fort Nugent Park. Sunrise Dog Park expansion, Portland Lewis, 7th Avenue Trail feasibility, and the Windjammers phasing. So we have taken care of the playground equipment, Harbor Heights land acquisition, 75 acres was acquired. The improvements were put on a hold with the access improvement costs being higher than was anticipated. And so now we're moving right now towards the build out of trails and disc golf course to be able to open up that space for the public to enjoy. And we'll continue to look at sports complex opportunities and locations. The pickleball courts, as you know, we ended up moving that, and those plans are just about at completion. The dog park expansion was completed, Portland Loos were installed. We have not yet done the Wetlands Trail feasibility study. We've pushed that off a little bit, and that's still kind of in consideration with council. And then we have been implementing some of the phase work with Windjammer Park, and we have the improvement scope in this biennial budget. So for the pros plan, rather than doing an update of what had been existing, we really would like to start from scratch a little bit, but looking at what had come out of those previous plans. So the major components of the scope that we'll include in here is coordination with the city, with the commission, helping to facilitate a public process, doing surveys, getting that public feedback and input, looking at demographic trends, built environment conditions, what's existing right now with our facilities, and what would be needed for future facilities compared to our population ratio versus level of service, ranking and prioritizing demand and opportunities, developing a set of prioritized recommendations for each of those, and then analyzing our programs and services, looking at our recreation programs, looking at user fees and analyzing that and our methodology for how we assess fees for rentals, for league agreements, for our programs and different things like that. We'll build in with that a cost recovery model, provide an analysis and recommendation for partnerships, and they'll provide progress reporting, develop the action plan, and then also look at a grounds maintenance management plan, and then final development of those plans and supporting materials. And this will all be done with consideration of some of the planning that we have currently going. So we have our urban forestry master plan that is currently in works. Let me stop. Just so I can see Stefania here. Our urban forestry master plan currently in works. We have our recreation feasibility study that is about to start. We also have a number of plans going on right now with pickleball, the inclusive playground, the trail system, windjammer improvements, as well as the marina and marina plans as well, which is part of Parks and Recreation. Funding for the project is $80,000, and we've included that in the RFP. And I've given you guys, I wasn't expecting to bring a copy of the RFP draft yet, but I don't know, there's a whole lot more I'm going to mess with it. So give it over to you guys, and similar to the inclusive playground, give you some time to look over it. You'll have more than 2 weeks with this one, though. We'll probably bring this back at the next commission meeting, but we will work with this on a subcommittee. Would like, though, to identify who you would like on that subcommittee for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This is a little more overarching plan. So I don't know if we would just want to keep this one at the commission level, or we will, at the very least, when we get to the point of getting those proposals, have a little committee for review of the proposals and selection. And happy to answer any other questions you guys have around this.
Thank you. So do we want to create a subcommittee then, or do we want to keep it just within the commission meetings?
I'm torn on that a little bit. I like the flexibility of the work that we can do in the subcommittees, but because it's such a big plan, I feel like we might be... Pipe down, Siri. Sorry about that. I'm worried that we might be missing out by not having all the shared wisdom in the room.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with that. I think keeping it amongst the entire commission.
It might be prudent too, just with the nature of the work, to do it in front of the community virtually, and so keep it here. I think a lot of the apathy and negativity that we have in the community in regards to some of this stuff is just that they're not aware, and at least this is an opportunity while we build a greater vision to help everybody have the opportunity at least to participate, whether they can come or log in virtually, so that we can have some form of conversation around it. I think that outweighs the flexibility of doing it in a subcommittee for me, so I would go that route, I think.
I'd agree with that assessment. Also, you know, we hit up the community a lot for their input on a lot of, you know, niche projects and plans. This is a much broader, comprehensive type of a plan, and so we definitely want to give it the due diligence it deserves. And you know, we're always sensitive. We don't want to burn out the community on, hey, can we get your thoughts on this? Hey, can we get your thoughts on this? Even though they'll come and say, hey, why didn't you get our thoughts on this, right? But yeah, we want them to be as aware as possible. And I know there are a lot of people that have very strong feelings on future facilities and improvements needed that want to contribute. So I agree. Anything and everything we can do to make sure this stays broadly in the community spotlight, and we do as much as possible to let people know and advertise it so they can be involved in every step of it is definitely the way to go.
I think in that regard, then we just need to make sure that we do carve out good working time to do it, since it will be more of a working project than an informational sort of transmission and those kind, and making recommendations, so that we can do the work in the meetings and make sure we're consistently doing it so it stays in front of everybody in the community.
Okay, any other comments? No? Okay. All right. We will go ahead and move on then to item D, feasibility study for recreation center update.
Really, it's just a quick update. Thank you for all your comments. I incorporated all your edits, and they were all good thoughts. Thank you, Kim, for cleaning up some of the language in there as well. We have turned that over to procurement to facilitate that bid process. And so that, if we follow the timeline, that will be a few weeks before we get those back. Yeah, so we're good to go. Really, I just need who would like to be on that selection committee for those proposals. Shane's on here. I think we might have, were we going to make it the athletic facility committee? Yeah.
That was the conversation last time.
I'll have to check with Shane. I know his schedule's been challenging to participate recently. And Carrie, I'll include you on that. Maybe you can serve as the alternative if Shane's not
Sure.
available.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. I will make that note, and that's all I have for that. But also, if you had any discussion or questions about the process.
We have two very big things going on, one line after the other here, in fact. With the recreation center and the master plan, both huge efforts, in my opinion. I guess I'm just curious. I'll be curious to see how it plays out as to what leads into what. I mean, they're so intermingled, I think, that, you know, I'm not suggesting we change anything. It's just that the recreation center discussion will precede the master plan, and I guess that's fine. It just might be through the master plan process that it might provide insight as to what we should do with the facility, with the recreation center. So anyway, just a comment.
Yeah, and the master plan will talk about recreation facilities, including the rec center. The rec center feasibility study is a much more focused, very in-depth and thorough look at everything from, you know, site analysis, pro forma, you know, what should be the makeup, where should it be, funding, opportunities for it. It has the focus that we need for what we want to do with that facility, where the master plan is more of a policy document and a future planning document, right? But as you read through the RFP, you'll see in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan RFP, I speak about the feasibility study and incorporating that into the master plan. So they will go hand in hand. We will keep them separate, but we'll probably also have some joint collaboration since they'll have a little bit of crossover. But I'm hoping that we have the completion of the feasibility study to incorporate in.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item E, Fort Nugent Park adding lights.
So I see that Cody Lunsford has jumped off. We had Cody Lunsford with Techline that was on the meeting, but also Counselor Marshall is in here as well. So I guess I'll leave it to you guys how much we want to get into this. I think it was Counselor Marshall that wanted to bring this item back. Let me pull up our lighting, excuse me, lighting footprint site plan for the football fields, and then we also have for the baseball fields. Let's see if this will switch over. Yeah, there's for the ball fields. So right now we're working. We don't have a consultant on retainer yet. We're just working with a couple of them, looking at what those site maps and needs are for lighting, getting some cost estimates together. We don't have this budgeted yet. This is just a item that we're getting ready to look at. I said, I think it was Councilor Marshall that wanted to discuss this item. So happy to answer any questions you have. Like I said, we do have our consultant available. He's not on currently, but I can either get him back on or send him any questions that you guys have.
Well, no, I'm glad that we're coming back to this. When we originally started even talking about like recreation and where we were going, a lot of the conversation was around the volume and inventory of our outdoor sports fields. And along the way, because of enthusiasm, we've sort of morphed that conversation into a recreation center rather than sort of like the idea of a regional sports complex or even just improvements of our outdoor fields and their availability, and thinking about the nature of Fort Nugent and how it's co-owned and a variety of things. So this is good to me because we need to come back to this because we still have to solve this problem. We have, not only do we have surfacing issues, but we have issues with seasonality and the lighting available. I'm concerned about doing any improvements to the baseball field when we have a baseball softball thing going on here where I would hate to see it not done equitably between those, not covering all of the Little League volume. Also, knowing what we want to do with those fields long term, because that's still in flux, I think, depending on how we decide or what we decide to do with outdoor sports fields and if we move to some sort of regional complex. I think solving the problem at Fort Nugent would be my priority in this initial round of conversation till we can build a more comprehensive view for handling all of the Little League, both groups there, or both, I guess, forms of ball and bat sports, and go from there. But something that needs to be done, and we need to be doing something. We need to stay active on the front of improving our outdoor sports fields and facilities, because, there's potential, but they're not up to standard. And I think lighting would go a long way, particularly for football right now, and then baseball, softball next.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I'm not familiar enough with the Little League. How late into the evening do they play? They have a longer day span to work with than football does. So I don't know, would Little League play up until 8 o'clock?
Yeah, they start their season pretty early in the year, and I think that's what triggers a lot of the need. It's not so much that they're playing super late into the night, but their season, their shoulder season is early enough and late enough that it gets dark pretty quickly. And also, we get into times of the year where it's more cloudy and they don't have as much good visibility. I definitely agree. I think it was about a year ago, when we had discussions around the sports complex at what's now Freedom Park, and when we brought it back to council of, hey, it's time to pick this back up. How do you want to proceed? The discussion completely went off into, yes, that's still important, but what we really want to talk about is indoor facilities and year-round facilities, and so a lot of that focus has definitely shifted that way. We know that there is still very much a need, especially for soccer fields. We know the schools will eventually build at the soccer fields, and so we'll lose several fields there, which was the original intent of procuring that 75 acres at Freedom Park. Also, your comment around the ball fields and softball fields, I absolutely agree. Love to do those improvements equitably between those two league-related but still different sports. We're waiting to hear if we're going to be able to redirect some funding into the softball fields or not. Like I said, with what's going on with the state legislature, it's a toss-up now. I thought for sure we had it, and then I was hearing, it's not likely, and now it's just a big question mark. So, we'll know as soon as they pass their budget and Commerce gets back to us. But there's also a little bit of, while we definitely would put all that money into the softball fields, and I have no problem, and I don't think the school district has a problem either of us getting an agreement together to do that. We are still a little bit cautious about putting city funds. That would be from a state grant, which is great, but allocating city funds to improve, to kind of long-term improvements of the school district's facilities is a little bit of a different discussion point. And also realizing that that area is probably the first choice of a future recreation center, and we would end up redoing all those outdoor fields anyway as part of that process, is also kind of in the back of everyone's mind a little bit as well. But we do have immediate needs, and we definitely want to be able to meet those. So, hopefully things work out with this state funding, and if not, we'll go to Plan B and have some more discussions on how we can do some meaningful improvements out there.
So much of this comes back to priorities, of course. One thing that has kind of been in the back of my mind through all these discussions is adult recreation leagues, which seems to me we have a dearth of. Now, I know the base has their own intramural programs. So they have lots of opportunities out there for lots of different sports. But as far as adult athletic or sporting opportunities, there don't seem to be a lot.
Yeah, and our recreation coordinator, Craig, is just biting at the bit to do all kinds of adult programming. We have a facilities availability issue, right? We're just about built out with availability during playable seasons. So, again, as we do our planning around the recreation center and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, looking at expansion of facilities for soccer, for baseball, softball, be able to do co-ed softball leagues again is definitely something we would love to do. We're doing kickball. We're starting to ease into it, but we definitely want to expand the offerings, especially for adults.
I just think we need to be cognizant of that, and I'm glad, that you're thinking in that direction. And as we look at facilities, it's going to mean looking at facilities that can serve more than one purpose. More than just
Yep.
Little League or more than just youth softball.
And we saw some great examples of those multi-use type fields when we did our trip down to Centralia. It wasn't Centralia, but it was the college's fields. Had a great turf field that they do multiple sports on, and the way they had it laid out was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about adult recreation sports is they can be played any time of year. They don't have to follow a season. So I think that gives us some flexibility.
I think a couple of things, and you highlighted it, Brian, is that Fort Nugent is the only one we have any sort of, at least the upper fields, any sort of permanent understanding about its purpose. And I think that should help direct our action here. I don't want to get entangled in any investment of anything on stuff that we don't know. We can't afford that, and that's the challenge that we have. But that challenge, that burden that we have of all of these things to do is actually a blessing because we get to do really good work. And there's a lot going on, but we actually have, we're put in a position now where we can actually radically transform the recreation here in a really good way. We just got to make sure that we don't lose sight of all of the things that need to be done by over focusing on one or the other. And I think so I'm really thankful that we're bringing this back. The other concern I have, just in regards to an indoor recreation center in general, we're going to have limited space in there. And even if we can allow for some of these teams or some of these activities to have like team practices inside, it's going to be the teams that can afford it. Okay? And one of my concerns is that some of the teams that may be made up of the people with the economic resources, in order to be able to afford the rental time, are going to be the ones that are going to be stuck outside. And I say stuck outside, it's actually, I think, a blessing to be outside, but we want to make sure that we're providing valuable, or we want to make sure that people are getting a good value for that return of investment, both of time and of finances, when they're outside. And we need to make sure that that's where the majority of people are going to be playing. Majority of people are going to get their first experiences, maybe all of their sporting experiences, whether that's for talent or resources or otherwise. And as we build and improve, let's make sure that we build and improve, that's going to catch the most amount of participants alongside the ones that are going to have, that can only house so many. When you have walls and a roof, you can only put so many people in a place. And keeping in mind that there will be high demand, but we need to make sure that the lesser demand stuff is still up to, well, not even up to, we should probably have a goal of actually exceeding standard. Up to standard, let's not just get by. Let's try to make a plan that actually is, not only can we be thankful for, but we can be proud of. Rather than saying, oh, Oak Harbor finally has something. No, like Oak Harbor has the stuff that we want to go to. That we need to have that goal. And I think we'd be doing ourselves a shame to make improvements, but just get to the bottom rung of the ladder. We can do better than that. And I think we owe the community a shot at that. There's been a lot of years of, I would say, embarrassment about the condition of our sporting and recreation around here. And that's such a shame for such a beautiful place with so many great people in this community. And it's time to step out from behind that and make sure we do it really well and we do it equitably across the socioeconomic spectrum.
Any further comments, questions? Stefania, did you have any comments?
Just a thumbs up. Well said.
Okay. All right. So do we want to come back to this at another meeting in the future when we have?
Well, why don't we go over the lighting plans, and we'll have Techline LED Sports lighting in on a subcommittee meeting with the athletics facilities, and I'll invite Councilor Marshall to that as well, or we'll work with his schedule, see if he can attend that. And let's have some discussion, work through it in that subcommittee, and then if needed, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Okay.
Can we also maybe have something around outdoor sporting facilities as part of that conversation if we ever get to it with council and or the mayor?
Yeah, and
Workshop.
that's something to keep in mind, when we do the joint meeting with council coming up at the end of this month. Maybe that's something you want to discuss.
Okay. If there's no further comments on that, we will move on to item F, subcommittee updates. Did we have anyone who wanted to go first?
I think a lot of what we did in our last subcommittee meeting, we've already covered in the agenda items. We had conversations with Dawn in facilities, just trying to get to this point so that we can actually be as close to shovel-ready as possible and find funds for pickleball. I think we also had some conversations just about the work being done up at Freedom Park and approaching that, where we're at with permitting, and all of that's moving along. Citing out where the walking trails are going to be in relationship to disc golf coursing and making sure that we have a harmonious interaction between the two that allows for the greatest experience for both, and making sure we get the highest volume of trail mileage that we can as well. Again, the park staff has uncovered, by just removing invasives and things, some really beautiful spots in there, and they've brought a lot of natural light into there in the work that they've begun, and can't wait for it to open and get people out there and really see. It's exciting. I've spent a lot of time bushwhacking with the team, trying to just locate everything that we want and putting down stakes. And Brandon and I left a lot of blood out there the other day, just getting stuff sighted and marked. But it's going to be definitely worth it, and it's really coming along. And the team is working very hard on doing it and doing it well and selectively with the brush and the things that need removed, and obviously targeting and getting rid of the invasive species. So that's exciting. I think we're in good hands with the work. It's slow going, but that's what you should expect when you're trying to do it the right way. You know, be cautious and do it well, and they are. Anything I missed, Tom?
Okay, any questions for that subcommittee? No?
Really quickly.
Yeah,
How
go ahead.
many, so the last time we met, I think hole 1 or area 1, I don't know if it's called a hole.
That's right.
Okay, was complete, and the second one was getting close, is that correct?
So hole 1, they've done sort of rough work. I haven't been out there this week to see what was done after my last time out there on Tuesday. You know, they were kind of, they went through a first initial clear to kind of get stuff open, and then they were doing the revisions after that to get the spacing and all of that right. We had cited, after that we had kind of cited and flagged for where hole 2 was going to be. There's a few holes that are like much thicker and a few trail places, just the nature of the park. 1 is very thick, 2 is far less work. So it's, the work won't all be at the same pace. And then hole number 9 was probably, on its rough cut, probably 2/3 done. So, and a lot of the work that's going, you know, right now is just getting everything dialed in to where those first cuts need to be and pass through, and then, you know, the cleaning up, the prettying up of it will happen secondarily after we make sure that everything's where it needs to be. So they're coming along slowly and steadily. They just picked hole 1 to give an example of what it would look like to help create some vision for the permitting process, and so everybody can see. And because of that, being very thorough with that first cut, and it's also just very thick, it's taking a little bit longer, but that's okay.
Okay. Parks and Playgrounds Subcommittee. We had Monica Kays from the Oak Harbor Garden Club join us for that meeting, and we went over just the beginning ideas of what a community garden might look like. There is a member of the garden club who has some experience with community gardens, and she's going to be attending our next subcommittee meeting. We discussed putting together an oversight board for a community garden, and just kind of started brainstorming what that might look like, what we would want included, where we would want it to be. So we're kind of in the beginning stages of that. We went over the inclusive playground, which we discussed today. At this point, I think that's everything we've got. Did you have anything else to add? Okay. Yeah. Were there any questions for that subcommittee update? No? Okay.
Where are we on the website? Is there more work? Are we where we
Yeah.
wanna be now?
The website actually is, Liz had me on board as like an official volunteer, I guess. So she is going to be, we're going to be meeting together in the next couple weeks, I think. And then I will have access to the website to make the changes. So I'll kind of have the time to go in there and do what we discussed already. And then once that's done, we can bring it back and show it before it gets published publicly, right? We can, okay.
Make the changes we've discussed along the way and have them live if we can.
Okay.
Or, whatever you're still comfortable with, I think that it'll be fine to have that date still as we do them, and then, if there's any changes, we can make them.
Okay.
Are we monitoring usage of the website, hits? Especially as they relate to our improvements? You know, do we get more traffic now than we were getting before, for example?
That I don't know. Liz, do you know?
Is that something we can do?
Brian?
I didn't,
believe so, yeah, you have a microphone.
no, sorry, I didn't catch that. What was the question, Tom?
Can we track usage of the website and watch it
Oh, track usage of it. Yes, yes, we can. Yeah, we can pull those metrics.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for that subcommittee? We're good? Okay. For programs and events, we went over the current programming, and there's been a lot of good numbers for signups for art classes and other programs, and we've connected with the Dino program for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and that has been a big help to increase enrollment as well. Would-Be Royalty has chosen Parks and Recreation to partner with to do fundraisers for, and kind of work with us on that. Liz might be able to speak to that a little bit more.
Pop over to the microphone.
Okay.
Yes, we're super excited to continue working with our would-be royalty friends, and it's specifically the Miss Oak Harbors. And so their focus is our youth recreation programs, and so we did just meet with them last week and outlined some of the different fundraisers that they're going to do that we can help support, and then different ways that they can advocate for and help with our youth programs. So we talked with them about our Recreation in Reach, which is our opportunity for people to give funds for scholarships for children of low income, right, to participate in our offerings. And so they're really excited about raising funds for our Recreation in Reach, and working with us also as kind of additional youth advisors to help us guide our teen programming and to help attract teens. So we're excited to be working with them.
Thank you. And then the other things we discussed, our mascot Ollie, the costume has been ordered, so that is coming in the near future. We also have been working with Parent to Parent, talking about accessibility for parades, so that's something that is currently in discussion. We don't have anything finalized right now, but we're talking about working with the city or we are the city. We're talking about working with Main Street and the Chamber to kind of coordinate a consistent accessibility plan for the parades. So, and with that being said, the parade for Culture Fest went very well. Thank you for everybody who helped out. The pirate ship was right behind us. The mermaids have actually purchased the pirate ship, so it is in their possession and they own it, but we will collaborate with them for our future events as well. I think that's everything. Stefania, did you have anything to add? No?
I think you got it all.
Okay. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to Parks and Recreation Director updates.
We got notified that we had an issue that was blocking emails. Also noticed that a couple of emails I've been sending out with attachments were getting kicked back. So just be aware of that. Might want to include, they should have the issue resolved. And it seems like it has been, although I'm still getting some emails kicked back if we're sending with attachments to the groups. So I am trying to just follow up and make sure everyone's gotten everything. But if you don't hear from me and you have a question and I'm not, timely in my response, just text me or call me or shoot me in our email just to make sure that I did receive it. The legislature, kind of going on our bad news streak here with grant funding, did not fund the outdoor learning grant for 2025. We got notice for it, so that's $4.5 million kind of lost for programs, including one of ours that Liz and Craig had put together. I will be at the WRPA conference this week with Craig, and so we will have all the firms and providers that do rec centers and master plans and playgrounds and pickleball courts. They actually set up playgrounds in the exhibit hall. Looks like every child's dream come true, and we're all just big kids there anyway. But should be able to have a lot of great discussions and hopefully come back with some good information and a lot of good guidance and some points for our subcommittees on the different projects that we're working on. Hiring has finally been starting to go well, especially for recreation, and day camps are starting to actually, I have Liz here. I'm just going to have Liz talk about, why don't you talk about some of the programs that you're hiring and day camps and all that?
Yeah, we're super excited about the recruitment for our summer camp. We're had some wonderful interviews this last 2 weeks and are moving forward with some finalists. So our camp registrations are looking really good. And especially now that Dino has committed to providing scholarships for 10 kids every week, which is awesome. So we're looking forward to seeing those numbers grow as well. And so, yeah, we've got some applicants. I can't share much more about them until they're onboarded, but we're on track with a great team for our first year of summer camps. And we're looking to have them onboarded for training the first or second week of June, as camps start June 23rd. So everything with our summer camps is looking really good, and it's fun to hear people out in the community talking about our summer camps. Brandon shared that when he was down, he had our Parks and Rec shirt on after the parade, and he heard a parent say to their kid, "Oh, look, that's where you're going to do summer camp. I bet you'll get a shirt like that with the otter on it." And we thought, oh, that's super fun. So we're just as excited as the kids for summer camp.
That's it for me. Other than, as you're probably all aware, Kate Rose passed away this last month. And I think, Gary, you wanted to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, take a moment to honor and remember Kate Rose, a valued member of our Parks and Recreation Commission who recently passed away. Kate was an extraordinary person, passionate, insightful, and deeply dedicated to serving our community. Her contributions left a lasting mark on this commission and all of Oak Harbor. Kate showed a deep commitment to giving back, always focused on what would best serve the people in our community. With compassion and creativity, she championed the core values of Parks and Recreation: health, wellness, connection, inclusion, and the quality of life. Despite every challenge she faced, she led with strength, grace, and generosity. The world was brighter with Kate in it. Her legacy of service and mentorship will continue to inspire us. Let us carry her spirit forward in all that we do. We're grateful for the time that we shared with Kate and extend our heartfelt condolences to her family, friends, and all who knew her. She'll be dearly missed and fondly remembered.
Yeah, Kate is irreplaceable. She was a vital and very important part of our commission. While we can't replace her, we will move forward with filling the vacancy, and we are setting up interviews for that, and we'll bring those recommendations back probably next month.
Thank you. Okay, we will go ahead and move on to our next item with that. Member comments? Do we have any comments from any of our members? Okay, doesn't look like it. So then we will move on to determination of future agenda items. Do we have anything at this time? Nope. Okay. All right, well, with that,